So I have a pretty big collection of TVs and movies, and anytime I buy a new DVD or Blu-ray, I digitize them. I rip them to my computer and save them on a hard drive. Not for the reasons you think, Johnny Law. I don't distribute them anywhere. I don't provide them to friends or family. I simply rip them to my hard drive because I believe, and actually have data to prove, that Blu-rays and DVDs are still the best way, in terms of quality, to watch content. And today I want to talk about why. So let's dive in. Now, it's pretty obvious that the most popular and in a lot of ways the most convenient way of consuming content nowadays is through streaming. You're literally streaming me right now, and you probably watch movies on Netflix or Hulu, or maybe watch TV shows on Amazon Prime or Disney+. But if that's the case, then why do I go to the trouble of getting this less convenient method of watching content? I have to go to my shelf, find the DVD or Blu-ray that I want to watch, take it out of the little package, put it into my Blu-ray player, turn on the Blu-ray player, wait for it to come up on my TV, and then play it. Why do I go to the trouble? Well, for this example, let's stick with Netflix and talk about how their streaming service works, because they have a bunch of different resolutions for all their different content. You can watch content at 480p on a low internet speed, 720p, 1080p, 4K, or you can even do 4K with HDR if the movie supports it, your player supports it, and your internet speed is good enough. And that seems great because most Blu-rays don't do that. They're not going to have HDR with 4K, and if you really want to get an expensive Blu-ray player, sure, you could get those same features, but I mean, you can hit play on Netflix and get the same thing, right? So you have all these resolutions, and each of these resolutions do have a certain speed that's required from your internet provider. The basic one requires roughly about 3 megabits per second or higher, and on the high end you're looking at 15 megabits per second or higher. And each of these is because the app you're watching Netflix through can dynamically scale the resolution. So if you're at home and you've got a really good Wi-Fi network and you're watching on your phone, you can get the highest quality that's available through the app on your phone. But if you're still watching and you leave the house and you disconnect from Wi-Fi and you go onto cellular, that internet connection might not be as good, so the app will dynamically scale that resolution back to something like 1080p or 720p, or if it's really bad, 480p, but you can still watch it. Basically, with the content you're pulling from Netflix, the only way to not get a picture is to not have internet. It dynamically scales pretty well. And this feature is great for casual content consumption. I have no issues with this. I mean, heck, I spend a ton of time on YouTube, and aside from like MKBHD videos, the level of quality you're gonna get out of a streaming service like YouTube is not gonna be quite as good as Netflix. So the fact that Netflix can dynamically scale like that is awesome for the casual viewer. But then again, what if you're not a casual viewer? I mean, the specs on Netflix seem fine, but how do they hold up when you compare them to the specs of a disc, like a DVD or a Blu-ray? Looking at the specs for a standard DVD, this has an output resolution of 720 by 480. It's obviously not HD by any stretch of the imagination, but Netflix has this resolution too, and they require a 3 megabit per second internet connection or higher. This DVD, though, can be read at 9.8 megabits per second, so it can actually provide more data more quickly than what Netflix requires for the same resolution. And that's fine and all, but you'd have to have the data there to really make use of that faster speed. Netflix, when you watch a 480p video for an hour, will require about a gigabyte of data. These discs, though, will have upwards of 4.7 gigabytes of data, and on the higher end with dual layer can be up to 8.5 gigabytes of data. But then of course with me listing off all these specs, you're probably thinking, okay, that's cool and all, but what does that really mean? And what it means is that the resolution is the same, 720 by 480, but the actual quality of audio, color, the image quality itself, all of that is going to be higher off of the disc because you have a bigger file at 4.7 to 8.5 gigabytes, and you're reading that data much more quickly, meaning that that information doesn't have to be compressed as much to fit on a disc like it does to be able to go through a lower internet speed. Something I've told people before, and I feel like it falls on deaf ears a lot of times, is that the resolution isn't made the same from one format to another. So when you look at a digital format like Netflix streaming versus a physical format like DVD, it might be 480p, but the actual data is higher quality on the DVD because it is all stored on a larger platform. And speaking of a larger platform, let's now talk about Blu-rays. Taking a look at Blu-ray, the specs for this are significantly higher than DVD. This has an output resolution of up to 1080p, and with 1080p on Netflix, you're looking at about 5 megabits per second or higher to pull in that data. These discs can be read at 40 megabits per second. That is a ton of data all at once. And yeah, a lot of internet speeds are faster than that now, but of course, streaming services have to accommodate for the lowest common denominator, so 5 or higher. This, because it's just going into a disk reader that was made for it, can be read at up to 40 megabits per second. All right, but now the question is, with that bit rate, what is the amount of data that this disk can hold? Well, on Netflix, if you stream a 1-hour piece of content with an HD resolution, so 1080p, you're looking at about 3 to 4 gigabytes per hour. This, on a single layer disk, is upwards of 25 gigabytes. And if 25 gigs isn't enough space, they actually make a dual layer version of this with 66 gigabytes. And just like before, this means that the files that go on these disks can have a lower compression ratio. So the amount of data that they keep for color, sound, the overall image quality, all of that is way less compressed than it would be coming through an internet connection of 5 megabits per second or higher. That is a massive jump. And it also has the benefit of TV shows taking up less disks and, by that extension, less actual space on a shelf. So you can fit more in and sell more. No more need for a 4-disc set of Trigon, I can just have it on 2. But yeah, I know, I can already hear people saying, what about 4K? Nobody watches things in 480p, there's not a lot of stuff that's coming out in 1080p anymore. What about 4K? Well, they make a disc for that, and it's called a UHD Blu-ray. And the specs for this are even more ridiculous. Just in case you didn't know what the resolution of 4K was, it's 3840 by 2160, which is the exact same resolution that these can output at. Just in case you forgot, Netflix requires 15 megabits per second or higher to stream 4K, and I would assume if you want Dolby Atmos or Dolby Vision, higher color qualities, higher audio quality, you're definitely going to be needing more than 15 megabits per second to get that with Netflix. But the content you play off of a UHD Blu-ray is coming through at 128 megabits per second, which is slower than what an internet speed is, but way faster than what any streaming service is going to provide for their content. Also, if you remember what I said earlier, if you watch an hour of content on Netflix at 4K, that can be between 5 to 11 gigabytes, whereas this can be up to 100 gigabytes of data being played for the entire disc. Though I'm sure somebody's out there saying, you're obviously not going to put 1 hour of content onto a 100 gigabyte disk. And you're right, you can put way more than 1 hour onto a 100 gigabyte disk. But the point is that you have the option to just not compress, or at least very minimally compress your content because of the amount of data provided on these disks. Anytime you stream a piece of content, it's being compressed and decompressed multiple times. It's going to be obviously digitized to go onto a data center. When you request it, it gets compressed to go through whatever your internet speed is. It gets to your box. It has to be decompressed to the best of your streaming box's ability onto the television. On the flip side of that, if I just take a 4K Blu-ray and throw it into a 4K Blu-ray player, it's just going to pull exactly what's on the disc and put it exactly on the screen. There's basically no compression aside from what needs to go through HDMI, and most HDMI cables nowadays are a high enough quality and a high enough throughput that it really doesn't matter. And then going back to what I said at the start of the video, when I rip my Blu-rays and put them onto my hard drive, I'm not compressing them. I'm pulling them in what's called an MKV file, and this file is just the content from the disc in a playable package format that most players like VLC can handle. And then on top of that, when I stream from my server to my TV, that relies on local network speed, not internet speed. So the faster my local network is from peer to peer, the less compression my content has to go through to get to my TV. And with my internet speed being okay, but my local network speed being really fast, Netflix comes through fine, but the content coming from my server is basically coming through uncompressed. So that's why I digitize my content. That's why I rip my Blu-rays, is because I get the convenience of streaming with the quality of Blu-ray. So hopefully with all that information, you all can kind of see that discs are still kind of important, because it's still pretty much the best way to watch content if you're really looking for a good, high quality representation of the media you want to watch. Yes, streaming's convenient, and like I said at the start, it's great for casual viewers, but if you really want the best version of the content that you want to watch, but you don't want to have to go to theaters to watch it, discs are still the way to go. Also, like, you know, this is going to be here for a while. I'm probably not going to use it too much because I digitized it, but if the digital copy ever goes anywhere, I still have the physical. If the disc for some reason has issues, I still have the digital. So, you know, it's here, and I don't have to worry about it vanishing from a streaming service at some point. Either way, that's been it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I really hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, definitely make sure to give this video a like. Leave some comments down below if you want to kind of give your input. Let me know what you think about physical versus digital. Do you all rip Blu-rays? Do you collect Blu-rays? Do you just stream? All that down in the comments below. Of course, subscribe if you want to make sure that you don't miss other content like this. And until the next video, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.